There was a lot that they had in their mind. There's definitely some things that they're very excited about, but there's quite a bit that they're wary about as well. Really, the number one thing is, hey, this is a new channel that allows in-context conversion, right? So they really see a ton of potential here and turning kind of high intent discovery moments, right? So when you're going on to ChatGPT and you're searching for a new pair of running shoes or whatever else that might look like, how can we actually now go from taking that sort of a search and discovery moment into a transaction without a redirect being necessary? So it's really promising, like a big new step change in conversion, almost like going from desktop to mobile. I think the number one concern, though, that we heard on almost every single conversation was disintermediation, right? You have retailers that spend, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars every year on customer acquisition and on building a very granular understanding of who their customers are. For them, almost like a doomsday scenario is becoming some sort of back-end fulfillment node for some of these AI platforms, right? So they really are worried about losing that direct customer relationship, that ability to cross-sell, build loyalty with these customers, and also losing a lot of that first-party data.
Yeah, probably the second biggest concern I would like to add is commoditization. It's funny, we talk with retailers that invest in their brands for decades already, right? So this is the only thing they do, really making sure how their brand is perceived. And now they realize, okay, how can I carry over this value into the agentic world, right? So how can I make sure that my brand is perceived by an agent that might only look at, price or shipping speed? So commoditization really comes up, yeah, as this major concern for all the merchants that we speak with. So I think retailers are really seeing agentic commerce as kind of a loss in surface area. So imagine like in a traditional web model, retailers own 100% of pixels that customers see. And in the agentic model, this kind of robot middle layer controls the interface. And this goes back to my earlier point of keeping control of your brand. Because what now happens is that brand control shifts from just like visuals to data. Right? So it means you can no longer rely on a beautiful homepage to convey your brand, and instead your brand must be encoded in the metadata that you provide to the agent. But it then almost automatically reduces down to your return policy or your shipping speed, maybe the sustainability credentials, but definitely also your price, right? And not every brand out there really wants to compete on price. So the strategic shift that most retailers we spoke to are executing search engine optimization to agent engine optimization. So they are restructuring their product data so that the good agents prefer them and effectively teaching the robots, why their brand matters.
Another major trend or theme that we heard a lot from retailers about was, yeah, what happens to my existing risk and fraud systems where, 10 or 20 or 30% of my incoming volume now comes via AI agents, right? The old security model was block all bots. That's been the foundation of every big, risk or fraud system for the last 15 years, which is keep the bad bots out, right? In an agentic world, though, blocking bots might mean blocking revenue. So the challenge becomes, how do you distinguish from a high intent shopper agent or a good agent from a scraper or a credential stuffer or a bad bot, right? Especially when they end up coming out looking technically identical. Fraud systems can no longer completely rely only on identity, right? Is this a human or is this not a human? Now they have to figure out, how do we start to assess intent? Is this agent authorized to spend on behalf of a real human on the back end, right? The biggest new friction point here now becomes all about liability. If a good bot goes rogue and ends up buying 100 of the wrong item, like, who pays for that? Who's on the hook for that? Is it the agent? Is it the shopper? Is it the merchant? Is it the issuer? Who pays for that? That is what we are trying to solve with cryptographic mandates, right? So these are really immutable records that show, what did the human explicitly authorize the agent to go off and buy for them? How much did they allow them to go off and spend on their behalf? And what exactly is the scope that they're allowing?
So when it comes to AI-driven retail use cases, let me start with the most obvious one, right, which is kind of the deep merchandising or discovery use case. And we all know that one. We have all used it before, and this is happening now. So agents are today already acting as kind of like our personal shoppers, filtering through thousands of SKUs and, filtering it down to maybe 3 or 4 based on kind of the complex, natural language queries that we give to them. So, right, I live in Berlin and I'm looking for a outfit to exercise outside when it's cold and rainy. I can put this in my LLM today and it spits out kind of the 3, 4 best results for me. So that's kind of today and present. Second, when it comes to kind of like service and customer engagement, we are seeing like a shift happening from deflection chatbots that try to get you off the phone as soon as possible to more, let's say, resolution-focused agents that can actually process refunds or modify orders autonomously and instantly while keeping you, the customer, engaged. And then probably the most important one is the commerce use case, right? And this is where we really see a lot of things emerging right now, which means that we are moving away from chatting to actual buying. And this is a shift where agent doesn't only find the product, but is actually executing the purchase within the AI surface, right? So within ChatGPT, within Copilot, and all of that is then happening without any redirect. What we believe is that the commerce wave is the most critical for retailers because this is where the risk of disintermediation is by far the highest. If you don't own the payment credentials here, you lose the customer.
As a lot of these initial ecosystems are being built, I think something that we've heard a lot about is like, how do we make sure that what we're building is really a merchant first, like open, interoperable AI ecosystem? Because there are definitely some risks as it comes to walled gardens, right? So maybe I'll start a little bit on the risk side, right? If you think about what a walled garden would imply here, think about like a closed ecosystem, right? Where there's a specific AI platform that requires its own, whether it's a proprietary payment token or something else. It really then forces merchants to build bespoke integrations into every single AI agent, right? It fragments their liquidity, it fragments their data, and worse, it gives that platform total control over the customer interaction, and it really ends up making the merchant into a dumb pipe for inventory. To bring this up a level even more than that, right? A lot of these merchants, the business that they are in is not the business of building countless bespoke AI integrations, right? They are focused on building world-class product, really understanding who their customers are and selling to them. That is what they want to focus on, and don't want to now become distracted by the fragmentation and complexity of now going out and building, a million different integrations into walled gardens, which is why if you think about where the value comes from an open ecosystem, right? An open interoperable standard really allows retailers to build, call it one integration that works across all agents or at least many agents. It makes sure that they can go out and accept payments from any AI agent using their existing payment stack or tech stack without now having to go out and build some sort of very proprietary integration that really only benefits one or a couple of players in the ecosystem. That idea is really where our North Star comes in, right? That is why our goal is to act as that universal translator. We strongly believe that a retailer should be able to accept a transaction, whether it's from an OpenAI or a Google or some sort of niche fashion bot, without going out and changing their backend integration for each and every one of them.
I think the most important preparation is really the technical readiness, right? So really clean up your product feed. If an agent can't read your SKU data, right, might it be the inventory or the price or variance via an API, you're basically invisible in this new economy. This is really what we tell all our retailers. You absolutely need a structured and real-time data layer. And then right after the technical readiness comes the strategic readiness. We call that doing like an audit of your auth layer. So really ask yourself, can your current infrastructure handle a high volume machine speed authorization request? Right? It also means you need like kind of a payment partner that can distinguish agent traffic from attacks, right? And that without crashing your success rate. So it almost means being ready for Black Friday volume spikes, but just every day of the year. And third, operational readiness. So stop treating payments and marketing as silos. So in the agentic world, payment credential really is almost like the loyalty card, which means payments and marketing, they need to sit together to define how you identify and how you reward customers who shop via an agent.
I think the final piece is the foundations for this are being built at the moment. Now is the time for retailers to really think very strategically about what this means for their business, right? This isn't a payments conversation. This isn't a technical conversation. This will be a fundamental shift in how retailers interact with their shoppers. We believe payments are going to be the way you end up answering that, right? That's going to be the way you can start to identify it. But we really encourage you to think at a very strategic level, how do we want to play in this new agentic world? Let me give you a little of a real world example of how payments can actually end up helping to solve at least some degree of that problem, right? Imagine a world where you're a retailer and you have an agent come in and shop on your ecosystem, and you've never seen that agent before. You don't know who that shopper that they're representing really is, right? What is a unifying piece of information here that allows you to connect the agent to the shopper to someone you've seen somewhere else on one of your other channels? That's the payment credential, right? If you can come in and recognize that this particular card or whatever the payment method ends up being is what's being used by Karan to buy something else from me on one of my other shop fronts, that's how you can now start to get around and solve this problem of disintermediation. So next time, if I'm able to recognize that payment credential, maybe I could surface some sort of loyalty or retention or marketing type of offer to make sure that Karan really continues to have that sort of emotional connection with me as a brand. Right? So we really view payments here as a means to an end, or really the tool that ends up making sure that retailers can maintain those sorts of very important customer relationships. I think my advice would be, like, if you think about what your guiding principle should be as a retailer, as you think through your AI strategy, it comes down to three words: own the mandate. Do not let an intermediary come in and own the customer's position, right? Ensure that when a customer is coming in and buying from you, the authorization, that mandate, connects directly back to you, the merchant. If you own the mandate, you own the customer. If you cede that mandate to the platform, you just become a commodity.
The risk that retailers are talking with us about is something they have seen before. They have seen it in social commerce, and they have especially seen it in the marketplace economy. If you give up on your customer relationship, you reduce your brand to being nothing more like a logistical node in the AI ecosystem, right? Forcing you to compete solely on price rather than value and on brand.